Tonight, the trade war set to explode in just hours. The major market rally in the morning fades, the day ending with another big loss on Wall Street after President Trump said he'll raise his tariffs on goods imported from China to 104%. What that could mean and how China is reacting. And Christine Roman's on the countdown to midnight and the price you could pay. Tom Yamas breaks down how everything from sneakers to smartphones to the popular new video game console could surge in cost. The moment the roof of a nightclub in the Dominican Republic caved in, killing dozens of people inside, including a one-time Major League Baseball star. The desperate search for survivors. The Supreme Court hands President Trump wins on two key issues, saying he does not have to reinstate fired federal workers and can keep using wartime powers to deport alleged gang members to a prison in El Salvador. Plus, young men and online sports betting, the growing concerns over the risks of addiction.
When I say severe, I'm talking gambling 8 hours a day, compulsively betting, waking up thinking about the bets that you placed the night before.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. The trade war escalating to new heights tonight as President Trump's latest round of tariff threats are hours away from becoming reality, including the latest tit-for-tat levies on Chinese goods, which at midnight will bring tariffs on Chinese products entering the U.S. to a cumulative 104%. And with the clock also ticking down on President Trump's across-the-board tariff against dozens of other countries, the White House is signaling there are potential deals to be made, saying many of those countries are already reaching out. A wave of optimism sent markets soaring at the open before a days-long sell-off resumed. The Dow losing 320 points for the day, losses 2 for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, which closed below 5,000 for the first time in nearly a year. Once again, Christine Roman starts us off.
Tonight, more whiplash on Wall Street. The Dow up nearly 1,500 points before closing down 320, and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ down too. All as we're hours away from a new round of President Trump's tariffs on imported goods.
We've been ripped off and abused by countries for many years with the tariff situation. They've used tariffs against us.
Though the White House says it's open to negotiation for countries looking to lower new U.S. tariffs for their products, saying 70 countries have reached out so far.
Bring us your best offers, and he will listen. Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits.
Now it's a global scramble to stop potentially disruptive border taxes.
We're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals. Right now, Japan is flying here to make a deal. South Korea is flying here to make a deal, and others are flying here.
But tonight, that trade war with China still flaring. Following tariffs and retaliation on both sides, after midnight, China will face a 104% border fee on its goods to the U.S. China's foreign ministry calling it bullying and blackmail.
I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation.
The Treasury Secretary urged countries not to retaliate if they want a deal.
Don't escalate, and then we will see where President Trump is after a period of days or weeks.
Tonight, most Republicans backing the president's efforts to bring back American jobs.
This has been a tilted playing field for a long time. The president's trying to even it out, and I think he's doing the right thing.
But Democrats warning the president's action could trigger a recession.
Donald Trump should immediately reverse his reckless trade war.
And tonight, new signs of division in the administration after these comments from top trade advisor Peter Navarro about Elon Musk.
Elon's a car manufacturer, but he's not a car manufacturer. He's a car assembler. He wants the cheap foreign parts, and we understand that, but we want him home.
Musk, who has voiced skepticism about tariffs, fired back, calling Navarro a moron, posting, "What he says here is demonstrably false. Tesla has the most American-made cars. Navarro is dumber than a sack of bricks." The White House on the feud today.
Look, these are obviously two individuals who have very different views on trade and on tariffs. Boys will be boys, and we will let their public sparring continue.
And back to the markets, Christine. This has been a very tough few days.
Yeah, Lester, in just 4 days, the Standard & Poor's 500 has tumbled more than 11%. It's now the lowest in a year. Investors rattled by all these new tariffs that start in just a few hours, and consumers likely to begin feeling higher costs within weeks, Lester.
And it's pretty clear by those swings we saw in the market today, Wall Street is still holding out hope for a deal soon.
Absolutely. Investors are desperate for this turmoil over tariffs to be resolved, and they will likely latch on to any kind of a sign, which is why sometimes they magnify even the smallest signals from this administration, Lester.
Christine Romans, thanks. And for more on the impact of the tariffs, I'm joined by Tom Yamas. And Tom, experts say the prices on everything from cars to toys could go up.
That's right, Lester. If tariff fees are fully pushed on consumers, the price tag for, say, sneakers made in Vietnam could jump 40%. An iPhone could spike $350. So tonight, we thought we'd take a closer look at a single product, Nintendo's hugely anticipated Switch 2 console, set for release June 5th. Nintendo has already sold 150 million Switches. The new version would be the first major gaming release since the tariff announcement. Pre-orders were supposed to start tomorrow, but instead the company hit the pause button. They've decided to assess the potential impact.
They got to figure out what they're going to get charged. Do they charge 50% more? Do they charge double? Do they even ship them?
The current price for the new Nintendo Switch, $449. Ironically, to keep prices down, Nintendo had moved some of its Switch 2 production to Vietnam because of earlier tariffs on China. But Vietnam is now facing its own 46% tariff.
How much of this is made in the U.S.? None of it.
None of it. The reality is, for these tariffs, it is a gut punch for every electronic. Nintendo being the first case because they're early in terms of the Switch. This is basically an economic Armageddon coming to tech.
Ives says moving production to the U.S. isn't a realistic option.
How much would it cost them to start manufacturing Switches here in the U.S.?
Tens of billions of dollars.
Billions? That's because of a supply chain that's been built over decades.
It would take 4 to 5 years to even build and get done a factory here in the U.S. And the reality is the assembly, the supply chain's in Asia. If you just build a factory here in the U.S., where are you getting all the parts from? Still in Asia.
Nintendo says it remains on track for a June 5th release.
In your estimation, how much of what we buy is going to go up?
90% of what we buy as consumers living in the United States is going to go up. And I think the U.S. consumer doesn't realize the storm that's coming, but they'll be seeing it over the coming weeks and months in those prices.
Tom, this is fascinating, but there's a big caveat here.
Yeah, Lester, there is a big caveat, and that's that the president has the power to exempt companies from those tariffs. It happened in the first Trump term. It's unclear if it'll happen in this term. It hasn't happened yet, but he does have the power to impose tariffs, but also to exempt some companies.
All right, Tom Yamas, thanks. Tonight, a desperate search for survivors after a roof collapse at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic. Dozens are dead, including a former Major League Baseball player. More than 160 people injured. Priscilla Thompson has late details.
Pain and heartache in the Dominican Republic tonight, amid an urgent search for survivors. The roof of this Santo Domingo nightclub collapsed early Tuesday, officials say, killing at least 66 people, with more than 160 others injured. We have trust in God that we will still rescue more alive from the ruins, the president said. Rescue teams seen here from above, combing through the massive pile of broken concrete and metal, searching for any signs of life. Loved ones waiting anxiously outside, scanning lists of names, hoping for news. We didn't see her name, one relative said. She's still in there. This video appears to show the moments just before the roof caved in, seemingly unsuspecting patrons enjoying a night out at Jet Set Club. Then, a loud crash and screams. Officials have not said what caused the fatal collapse. The disaster unfolding during a performance by merengue singer Ruby Perez, who officials say is among the dead. The show, attended by politicians, athletes, and more. Photos of the scene show the fallen roof in pieces, crumbling cement walls, and piles of debris. Nelsie Cruz, a governor in the DR, died in the collapse, calling the president from under the rubble, according to the country's first lady. Also killed, former MLB players Tony Blanco and Octavio Dotel. The New York Mets holding a moment of silence at tonight's game to honor their former teammate and all the victims. Tonight, a country in mourning as all government resources are deployed to continue the desperate search for survivors. Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
We turn now to the growing measles outbreak in West Texas, where cases have surpassed 500. The news comes after a second unvaccinated child died in the state. Officials there are recommending infants get their first dose of the measles vaccine beginning at 6 months instead of waiting until they turn 1. More than 600 people have been infected with the rapidly spreading virus nationwide this year, but doctors say that number is likely an underestimate. None of those legal victories for the Trump administration at the Supreme Court, including the justices ruling President Trump can keep using wartime powers to deport alleged gang members. Here's Gabe Gutierrez.
Tonight, the Trump administration is touting 2 legal victories at the Supreme Court. The justices allowing the firing of 16,000 probationary federal employees to go forward, at least for now, part of the White House's efforts to downsize the bureaucracy. And in another win overnight, the High Court also allowing President Trump to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged gang members to El Salvador, for now.
We have judges that are out of control that say, oh, bring them back, bring them back. We don't want them back.
A lower court judge had temporarily blocked the president from using those wartime powers for deportation flights.
The highest court in the land made it clear that the President of the United States has the power to protect our homeland and forcibly remove foreign terrorists who pose a grave threat to families and communities.
But migrant advocates call the victory a technicality. The justices also ruled deportees must receive advance notice and the opportunity to legally challenge their removal.
The government cannot summarily take people and put them on planes to a Salvadoran prison without giving them the opportunity to go to court.
Also, as it ramps up its immigration crackdown, the Department of Homeland Security is now revoking the legal status of nearly 1 million migrants who were released into the U.S. during the Biden administration, using a phone app created to make asylum screening appointments.
The rules at the time weren't fair. The rules were dangerous to Americans.
Meanwhile, Gabe, you have some new reporting of the president's potential new effort to target Mexican drug cartels.
Yes, Lester, NBC News has learned the Trump administration is considering launching drone strikes on drug cartels in Mexico. That's according to 6 current and former officials with knowledge of the matter. The U.S. says those cartels are responsible for trafficking drugs, including fentanyl, and the discussions are at an early stage. Today, Mexico's president said she would reject any of those actions. Lester.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. In 60 seconds, the youth soccer coach charged with the murder of a 13-year-old player. Plus, the chilling new details, what law enforcement is now saying about possible other victims. There are new questions tonight into the death of a 13-year-old California teen, his youth soccer coach being charged with murder. L.A. District Attorney saying the death penalty is not off the table. Our Morgan Chesky has more.
Inside a Los Angeles courtroom, soccer coach Mario Edgardo Garcia Aquino will soon hear formal murder charges after being accused of killing one of his own players. Officials say the undocumented 43-year-old is accused of killing 13-year-old Oscar Omar Hernandez.
The Hernandez family, you have our deepest sympathy.
The DA stressing the death penalty remains an option as investigators piece together a disturbing timeline. Prosecutors allege Garcia Aquino killed Hernandez on March 28th after his family says the coach hired him to do housework, but Oscar never returned. By March 30th, family reported him missing. Authorities discovered the boy's body 2 days later, dumped in a neighboring county.
No le merecía eso, mi hermano.
Oscar's brother breaking down, sharing he didn't deserve this. Now the family's pressing authorities on why Garcia Aquino was still coaching after 2 other teens previously accused him of sexual assault.
You gotta be careful now. Whoever you go out with, even though you trust them, you never know.
Now, as a memorial for the murdered teen grows, authorities urging other potential sexual assault victims to speak out.
You may be here undocumented. We're not going to ask about that. Please, you need to come forward.
And in addition to those murder charges for Garcia Aquino, late today, the DA announcing they're also adding charges for sexual assault against a minor, saying his new arraignment is set for April 30th. Lester.
Morgan Chesky, thanks. We are back in a moment with our in-depth report on the growing concern over young men and the rise in online sports betting. How for some the risk can be deadly. What you need to know next. With the March Madness tournaments now over, so too is America's biggest betting event of the year. An estimated $3.1 billion wagered on the men's and women's games combined. As Aaron McLaughlin reports, there are growing concerns about just how prevalent sports betting has become, especially for young men.
When online sports gambling went live in Ohio at the start of 2023, Vic Coley says he, like a lot of young men, started placing bets on sporting events through apps, occasionally for small amounts and for fun.
It was the new legal thing to do. Everyone was talking about it. There were advertisements everywhere.
He had no idea how serious a problem the gambling would become for his close friend Xavier.
He only showed me times he made money and when his bets won.
Though the reason for his death can't be known for sure, 2 days after 28-year-old Xavier placed this $10,000 sports bet and lost, he took his own life. NBC News is withholding Xavier's full name at the request of his family for privacy reasons.
He was a bit frugal with his money. You know, we'd go out for drinks and he would only want to go during happy hour because there were deals.
In 32 states plus D.C., placing a bet is now as simple as opening up an app on your phone. Research shows nearly half of all high-risk problem gamblers are between the ages of 18 and 34, and twice as likely to be men. That same study from Rutgers University, which notes nearly half of those surveyed who bet on sports did so before it was legal, found that 20% of high-risk problem gamblers have attempted suicide.
I felt like I was just in the dark, hiding from myself.
Rob Minnick says he went into debt 6 times over the course of 6 years before finally handing control of his bank account over to his mom and getting help.
Would you say you had a severe gambling addiction?
Absolutely. When I say severe, I'm talking gambling 8 hours a day, compulsively betting, waking up thinking about the bets that you placed the night before.
Minnick now works full-time as an advocate to stop what he believes is a growing nationwide crisis.
I think we're going to see huge rates of bankruptcies, huge rates of divorces.
And at what point do you think people in this country are going to wake up?
When enough people have killed themselves.
The American Gaming Association tells NBC News that legal gambling is far safer than the alternative, saying nearly 2/3 of American adults reside in a legal jurisdiction for sports betting that delivers robust regulation, affords consumer protection, supports responsible gaming initiatives, and offers problem gambling services for those who need it. Xavier's family showed us records indicating he'd lost more than $40,000 in just 17 months of betting. Some of those high-stakes bets seemingly encouraged by a concierge service from an online sports betting company, including text messages to Xavier from a VIP host account manager, offering him free game tickets with club access, additional protected bets, and advice for ways to deposit larger cash amounts into his betting account.
They don't know the person. They just see it as another download.
A year after his death, his phone still gets texts promoting bets from online gambling sites. Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Philadelphia.
If you or someone you know needs help, please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. That's Nightly News for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.